Why then you just take the points that you want. So I didn't have much time. I got down here. I think we should get this first part here.
Okay.
Don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And that he worked in the coal mine, that he was convinced by his foreman, and that he was.
Now that was here in America?
Up here, yeah, of the coal mine.
Was it?
Is right in Iowa. They come to
Yeah.
Iowa, to the
That's
state of
fine.
Iowa. I don't know where they came from there. That's where the first time we ever knew Brother Sparling was up in, that he said he started from Iowa. I don't know how far over in Iowa it was. But if you want me to I'll just put this down like I got it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that way, then if you hear anything different, you can correct it. But that's the way so I would just, you got to go now?
Mm-hmm, it's ready.
Brother Henry and William Sparling came from England, belonged to the Church of England, I believe, later became Methodists. They both worked in a coal mine in Iowa. Their foreman was a RLDS minister. They talked the Bible every day with this minister. They sat on their stools, they ate their lunch, we will put that in, and talked Bible every day. They were invited to come to hear their foreman preach. They become so interested they sat on the edge of their seats each night, listening to every word and chapter and verse, taking down notes to read each night after their hard day's work in a coal mine. They were convinced that this was the gospel they had been searching for so long. They were baptized, confirmed, and called to elders the same day, with the assurance that they were now engaged in God's work, knowing full well their path would not be an easy one. The reorganized church under Joseph III was not too old, and the tithing and offering were not coming into headquarters very fast. The church headquarters were in Lamona then, I am sure, from Amboy, Illinois. The month's salary for the missionaries were only $12 per month.
Boy, that's not much, is it? Do you know, by the way, before you get too much farther, any idea who baptized him and confirmed him, or
No, I wish somebody would have asked him. It was a novel.
You wouldn't, but maybe the church could tell us. Could we go back to the church records, do you suppose?
I think you could.
And
When we knew him, I don't know how long he'd been in the church, but when he came to us was 1916. But he would have been a missionary for a long time before then. And so I would say he come into the about just a little while after. See, the reorganization started in 1860. That's when Joseph came with his mother to Amboy,
Mm-hmm.
And that'd be 1860. Well, my mother was born in 1874, don't you see? So I'd say along maybe, anybody have an idea how old Brother Sparling would be by now? Do you know how old he was when he died?
He was in his 90s, wasn't he?
No, he wasn't.
I don't believe he was.
Oh.
But I can't.
I thought he was about 86. That was my.
Well, if we knew, I'd say that the headquarters were in Lamoni. Have you got it turned off now?
No, I want to get all this. Go ahead.
That the headquarters was in Lamoni. I heard him say that. So at first, when it first started, it was they got the thing together in Amboy, because that's where the ones who never left the church or followed the Brigham Young West. All those men were all congregated in Wisconsin and Illinois, don't you see? And that's how they had the Amboy conference, hoping and praying that Joseph someday would come. And they had an assurance that he would come to that conference. He brought ammo with him, And when they saw him enter that Amboy conference, they began to sing, "We thank thee, O God, for a prophet, to guide us in these latter days." And when he walked to the rostrum, he says, "I come not urged by any man," or convinced that he should come by any man. He came under his own power with God. That's why he came, don't you see?
Mm-hmm.
And from that day on, he had no more doubt but what he must take up his father's work, because he had a hard time in Nauvoo after his father was killed. And he was going to be a lawyer. And then if he hadn't had that vision, he said he had a choice. I showed your free agency. He had a choice that he could become a successful lawyer, and that he could carry back and forth among the little green-topped houses, he
You're
said.
talking about Joseph Smith now, aren't you?
Uh-huh.
Joseph Smith.
Joseph, the one who took the real organization together. And he said, or he could be this lawyer, or he could take up his father's work. And, you know, he had all night long visions of what he should do. You know, either he could make his choice, so he made his choice and went to the Amboy Conference. And from that day on, he walked the straight and narrow way, because he was not a bad man, but he didn't want his father's work. He didn't want to go through all that persecution and stuff that he had seen, you see. And so somewhere after that, after 1860, I'd say up to maybe, I'd say he found it along about 1890 or something like that. That's what, see, I'd be 10 years before the next century.
Well, I think Grandfather was 21 when he came over here from England, and we can look up his birth records and get some idea of that.
Some idea about the time he came in the gospel, see.
Uh-huh.
Because he wasn't over here very long until he found it. He found the gospel, and then he was such a, God wanted him so badly, and they needed him so badly that they put him right into the field. Yes, I'm sure you could find it.
I bet they would have records, but you wouldn't have any idea what the foreman's name that he heard from it about first.
No, just heard about it.
We'll just have to do without that.
But that's kind of like Brother Bashir's. You see, Brother Lundin lives today. He was the superintendent of the shipyards and over the machinist part of it, you know. And that's where he met Bashir's.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of our men our good men, they do hold responsible positions in any place, you know, and sometimes that's the way other men find them, because they're over them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go on so we can get everything down.
Well, it's not very good, is it?
It's fine.
It's the best, but I tell you, since 1916, and just visited him a little when he came to Springfield. Uh-oh, there's your book. Or am I talking too loud?
No.
Now, let's see. It's $12 per month. They're missionary. You got that down, haven't you? So
Yeah, it's still going, Olga. You
Oh,
go ahead and
all right.
talk.
No, they're doing
Brother William Sparling was sent north to the states surrounding, because I know he said he took out to Nebraska, Brother William Sparling. And Brother Henry Sparling worked toward the southeast Missouri. That's around Willow Springs and Ava, and all back through those hills, and those tall hills. One of those hills is very significant with one of his testimonies. And that's where he started his work, right? That's where he first went down the dusty roads trying to find a place to preach. And when he went down these roads, he said that he tried to preach on, if there was a store, you know how you have a general store sometime in a country, and people come to this one little store. That's all maybe there is there. Some man has took a crossroads road and put up a store. Well, he'd try to preach in front of those stores, and these people, they would find out that he was a Latter-day Saint. The Mormon time, and that day and time was, people were worked up against the Mormon church. Today they're not like they were, you know, because they're so important. California's so full of Mormons that you can't tell who is a Mormon. And anyway, they would throw anything at him, like eggs or rotten tomatoes. He couldn't get even a foothold. And he had everything he had in a suitcase. When he told Sally goodbye, and those 3 little children, he said there was nothing in the house but their garden. And a check had not come. And he said one thing he could remember well, that they had plenty of turnips. Now, who could live on turnips? Nothing much else to go with it, you see. But with faith, Sally packed his suitcase with everything that he had in one suitcase. And he took the road. No way to travel but the road, or if he got a way to ride in a wagon, it was traveling from one town to the other, he got down that way. But anyway, he said that he knew he was out to preach. That was his job, to preach the gospel. It wasn't to ride around in wagons. So everywhere he could think there would be a place to preach. And he got so tired of being turned down and rotten eggs and everything that he said he just got so weary along the road from carrying a suitcase that he sat down on a log. Now, you want to get this. This is one I think is real good. And he said he was so weary and his feet were so tired, he was even thirsty. He didn't even have water to drink unless he get to a branch or something, just get down on his hands and knees and drink it. And said, well, he put his head in his hands, and he said he wept almost like a child. He cried so hard. And he said while he was weeping, he made this statement. He said, "O Lord, why do thy servants have to suffer like this? Why do they suffer so long?" And he said he felt the presence of hands on his head. And he looked up and there was a person standing there. And he said this personage prayed for him and anointed his head. And when he did, a refreshment came over him just as if he had eaten and had drank water. You know, just like he had a nap and everything else. And he said, I grabbed my suitcase. He said, "Look on yonder hill." This person said, "You look on yonder hill." And he, for the first time, looked up that hill. He saw a farm home. He hadn't seen it when he sat down. He was so tired that he said he didn't even notice this home. And he ran up that hill. He said, our suitcase was not heavy no more, and I fairly ran up that hill. And as I got to the gate, everybody used to have yard fences, you know, and farms. And he said the man had a bucket on his arm and was going to milk. And he said, "Hello there." And he said, "Hello there." He says, "I'm a minister, and I would like to stay all night with you and get some supper." He said, "Fine, just come right on in." He said, "My wife's a cooking supper, and I'm going out to milk the cow." And he says, "I'll be back short." And he said, no words in heaven ever sounded as good to him as that. And so he went on in and said the wife was just as friendly as the man. He didn't come in with him. He just told him to go on in. And so pretty soon the man come back with the milk, and they went with that, and they had their supper. Then he sat down and began to tell them about his church. And they sat up nearly the whole night. They were so hungry and interested in the things that he could say that they sat there the whole night. And this man that in the home was the president of directors of a school. They always have 3 directors, and one of those are the boss about things, you know. And they call him the president of the directors. And he just hit the right place. This man had authority, you know, to tell him that they believed he could get the schoolhouse without any opposition. And he made handbills. Before he even saw anyone, he made these handbills and took his hammer and he tacked with him and his horse, and he went to see the other 2, and they were in favor of it. And he had these notices that they'll be preaching tonight in the schoolhouse. Preaching everywhere, every place that they was across the road or any place, he put these signs. And he said, believe it or not, that schoolhouse was packed. And he said he preached with such power, he forgot that he was tired, he forgot everything, because God had blessed him so abundantly with his preaching. And he not only preached 1 week, but 4 weeks straight. And he said that farmers were converted, the whole families were converted. People came on horseback. And he was able that he not only made 1 mission, but farther on down where the farmers had come from, they started a 2nd mission. And it wasn't churches, but there was enough that they were either schoolhouses or what. And from that was his start. Now, I don't know just exactly where it was, but it's in somewhere between Norwood and Ava, back in that part of the world where it's so rugged from Springfield. And you know, everybody that went to Ava knows how tall the hills are around Ava. And that's very important, too, in this. It always makes me laugh, but I remember Brother Sparling telling this. And there wasn't a lazy bone in your grandfather. That fellow, he was a little fat, chubby fellow, but he had initiative. He had something that pushed him along to have something better than he had. And I don't know that it was given to him or what, but he acquired some acreage. It must have been at least 5 acres, because he could have some corn and he could set some fruit trees, and he got a horse, he had a saddle, he had a plow, and he built a cabin and a side kitchen to it. He had fruit trees come. He had several years of that, you see. But he never he didn't spend his time just doing that. That was between preaching. He had enough started by then that by all 4 Sundays, he could preach morning in this one, Sunday night here, morning there, Sunday night there. He made the cycle back. Then he'd pick up his hammer and go ahead and build his cabin and build his fences and everything. And while he was very busy one time in the field, I thought this was real nice, he heard a wagon coming around his around the bend, but it'd be some time before it got around the Sparling, but he could hear the wagon coming. The boy spoke to him, he said, now catch this wagon. Stop this wagon and go ride with this man, for he's going to Willow Springs. See, that's below Mountain Grove. And he says, have you ever been down that highway? Have you been below Mountain Grove? And so he said, I have a child that's a saint who is very sick, and she is very ill, and she's been praying for elders to come, and said, you catch this wagon. So he ran home and said, just jerked on his clothes, and told Sally they had to go. They had to catch that wagon. So he waved this man, and the man stopped, and he said, where are you going? He said, to Willow Springs. He said, could I ride with you? He said, you sure can. When he got where he let him off, he said, is there somebody in this town who has been ill a long time and sick? Some lady, didn't tell the name of one. He said, yes, right down here, down in that little house toward the pasture there. Said she's been sick all summer. And so he goes, and when the family sees him, I think she's so weak that she doesn't hardly know, maybe in a coma or something. But they said that was the last thing that she had prayed, that God would send someone to anoint her so she could get well. So she was so needed in that home. And so he knelt, and the family knelt, and they anointed her. She immediately sat up in bed, was well, and asked, who his name and everything. And he told her that he was spoken to in the field to come to Willow Springs because one of his children was sick, and she had been very ill.
Is this not the same testimony about where he raised the lady from the dead? This is not the same one?
I never heard that one. But she was still alive, this woman was, but been ill so long. And did you, now maybe you have some too that you can add to this. I mean...
Well, we don't know. This one here that Linda's talking about, Charles C. Yeoman was telling us about this, that Glenn's mother had told her the story about how grandfather...
But she lived down in there by...
Oh, no, his mother might be able to tell us.
Oh, yes.
No, she died, didn't she?
Sayre. They lived down close to Sayre. And that's still below Willow Springs. That's Willow Springs, Kabul, and then Sayre. On that road to Memphis, see.
Well, say I don't know all the details about it or anything, but Charlie was just telling me that...
But you're there. You get what you can on that, Helen.
No.
Can't you?
I'll try, but I think Glenn's mother's dead now.
Well, maybe
yes.
Well, as I remember it, Charlie said that she had a newspaper clipping where this woman that he raised from the dead, and when she died the second time, they had in their hometown newspaper, they had this little short column that said that she had on record 2 death certificates because the doctor had pronounced her dead and had registered her death certificate, and then the elder Sparling came and administered to her, and she was well again, and then she died when she was like 80-some years old, and they had a second death certificate, and they said it was the only one they knew of anywhere in that area that had 2 death certificates. And she said because Charlie said she used to have a clipping from the paper about that.
It could be this person because she'd been ill a long time, and it could have been that she died, and I just don't remember.
Well, he called a ride with someone.
I bet this is
It sounds like the same story.
Yeah.
And he was told in the field to go and catch this one.
Well, that sounds like the same story. That's the reason I don't...
Well, maybe before he got there, maybe she died.
Well, as she told it, as
Is
he
that
was...
where he told them to all go out of the room that didn't...
And she said that as he was going up the steps, the doctor came down the steps out of the house with this paper in his hand. And that was her
death
death
because I'm pretty sure, I don't know the names, but I just know it was such a wonderful thing. She was healed, and he was told to go to her. That always impressed me through the years. This won't bother us. I think they'll be quiet. Now, let's see, Lee's home. I just had
I thought, is it 3 o'clock already?
about 3.
We got out early, 10 till 2, still calling.
Now, you wanted to be right quiet. And now this is where he settled. Now this is where Brother Sparling rebels. Have you got it on?
I turned it on.
He actually rebelled. And you know how he talked, that English brogue. And he said, here came this letter from Lamoni. After he had his cabin, after he had his orchard, after he wasn't lazy, he'd gone around to all the cycle churches. You see, kept them going, served their sacrament. And he thought, right here's where I am doing the Lord's work. If I had been laying down on the job, well, he'd have felt like he was justified in getting this letter. And so when he read it, he told Sally right off of the reel. He says, come and go to Springfield, Missouri, get ready to go to Springfield, Missouri, because I have many sheep there, and that this is his next place. And he said, he says, I found me the highest mountain that I can find. He said, people nowadays go to their basement to pray. But he said, I looked around there and I looked for the highest mountain that I could find. Because I was going up there to bawl the Lord out. Because he said, I had done all this good work, and he knew it. And I hadn't laid down on the job. So I walked up that hill. He said, my hands were just going like this, and I found that when I come to the top, I was out of wind, but not out of wind too much for what I could bawl him out. And he said he knelt down there, and after he said, like he didn't know what I'd been doing. Like he didn't know that I had accumulated the house and the horse and the orchard, and was up and felt like he was secure again. And said, now Moses never did hear the voice of the Lord any clearer than I did. He said, the Lord said unto me, he said, once more I require this of you, my servant, for I have many sheep in Springfield, Missouri, that must be gathered. And he said that voice was so clear, and so, he said, I don't know what it does to you, but he said it just goes to every fiber of you. You know that you must do it. And he said, I came down that hill pretty slow. Said, in fact, he said, I came down like a whipped dog. And he just chuckled, a whipped dog. And so, well, it makes the rest of us laugh too, He said, I come to the house and I told Sally it just wasn't going to work. I had to go to Springfield, Missouri, because he had lost sheep there. And that's where you got the camps, and Francis Folks, mother, lots of them, Brother Demlin, And so he got up there, and I wish I've tried all day to try to remember who ran the lumber yard in Springfield. At that time, he ran a lumber yard, and he was wealthy. He had servants and surreys, the surrey with the fringe around it, and the colored man drove it. And he ran the lumber yard, and he went direct to his house, and he told him his story. And he said, not only that, but the Lord showed me the lots that I was supposed to put the tents on, the big tabernacle tent. And he said that, I can't think of his name, maybe it'll come to me. But he said, now that you have my driver and the surrey, and he says, you drive into any vacant lot. He said, you know about where the vacant lots are. And he says, well, you know the lots, Brother Sparling, when you come to, oh yes, I'll know the lots. And so they started, and he said that we went over in the silk stocking district first, and then over down South Boulevard and out in there, Pickwick and all back in there. And so the colored man would stop, whoa, drive on. This is not the two lots I saw. And he just drove and he drove and he drove. And he said, well, let's go back this other way. So they went out North National. We used to call it North Boulevard, I think then. And he said they started. And when they got to Dale and North National, it used to be, I guess the buildings weren't there, two lots. And he hollered to the man, whoa, this is it. This is the place where he wants me to put the tent. And so this lumberman ordered him the tent, everything that went with it, to make it what it should be. And they came by droves, buggies and everything even. And he said they sat even in a ring around this tent. And said preach, he said he hadn't preached like he preached there, you know, and everybody was listening. He had no opposition of eggs or anything, you know, and trouble like that. And he was able to start the beginning of Springfield. And I think it was that you heard his dream of the log that was split, you know, and at both ends, and then he's supposed to put one in the middle, you know, to break the log.
I don't remember much about that.
I think I've heard Francis tell that. But the Springfield town was that there'd be a church here and a church there, and then they would, anyway, there'd be 3 churches there. I guess Brentwood has finished that out, but even if it has gone kind of, you know, Don Landon-fied. But anyway, he was just so blessed with this move that he made, and it told him if he came, he would never be hungry. His family would never be hungry, and that he would have a livelihood. And that's what caused him to go and buy down these dilapidated homes. And the floors would be sinking. He put new floors in them. He fixed them. He bought them he had enough to start with to buy one. And then when he'd get that fixed up and the rent come in, he bought another. And he wanted each child to have a home. And did each one of you grandchildren get a home from him? Well, didn't Herman get his and Henry? They didn't. Well, he wanted, about the time Mary died, he said, I intended that each one of my grandchildren would have one of these little fixed places. But Nell and Kate got theirs given to him from him, didn't they?
Yeah.
I don't know about John.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. I'm sure
Uncle John got some.
Well, that's what made Mary Martin so angry, see, because he aimed for these children to have this. And it was fair because, as I said, just a moment, I've heard others tell me this. We can't put that on there, can we?
Go ahead, I won't put it in the book.
And, but he said that Hattie and Francis, they carried their Hattie and Esther carried their mother around like a queen. Oh, Mama this and Mama that, and Mama began to dress nicer, and Grandma had this, and pink gloves and white gloves and lavender gloves and everything, you know, to go with her outfits. And he said that they just transformed their love for their mother just as soon as she began to have a little something. But when she was a liability to them, you know, maybe she'd get sick, she couldn't even go to the hospital. Well, they didn't pay attention to her. It was noticeable. But the moment she married Brother Sparling, said that was noticeable too. That she became just like a doll overnight. But well, we all know that story because you don't need to put this on the tape, you know.
Well, what was that, where was he when he was preaching and they threw this rock and broke his jaw and the Lord healed it immediately? You remember anything about that? I've got the rock.
You have.
Oh, haven't you heard that, Olga?
No.
That's
He told me about something, but I didn't hear that.
Well, this was when he was preaching in a big tent, and some boys came in, you know, ready looking for a fight in the tent. And
Well,
they
they could have done that one on day on the boat.
I don't know where it happened, but they started throwing things, and they threw this great big old rock. It's about that big. And Mother used to keep it on the dresser. It was real heavy.
And sharp, jagged corners on it, too.
And it hit him in the jaw and broke his jaw. And he was standing up.
His jaw just fell down against his chest.
You could tell that it was broken because it was just
give away.
sag. And they, of course, had to stop the service because he was the one that was preaching. And some of the ones up on the platform, is this the way, if I'm not telling the way you heard it, will you stop me? But the way I remember Mother telling it was that they, some came up to him, some of the other elders, and laid their hands on his head, and he was immediately healed. His jaw went right back into place.
That's marvelous. I wish I had heard that one.
And he kept right on preaching, too, didn't he?
Yeah, I just kept on preaching then. Finished his sermon.
I just wondered if that was a little one, and when he's told to come to
I don't remember ever hearing where it was.
Well, you see, he was led to that lot. He knew it when he saw it. I thought that was so marvelous, don't you see? And then he got so many, and Brother Demler tells of the dream he had. He was wondering to God where he, if he had a church, and he saw, it seemed like after the tent went down, they met in the upstairs over a building.
Yeah, that was on National Dale. They built a little store building, and he preached upstairs over the store building.
Yes. And Brother Denver saw in a dream that he must go up that stairs and he'd find the church.
Oh.
Brother Denver would go with that testimony. That's how he found it. But he was a businessman then. I think he was doing the cars and things down Walnut where he was. And he was a young man. And that's how he found it, by a dream. And so Brother Sparling was, even the Lord did have to cool him down a little, you know. You can't blame Brother Sparling. He had a hard time, and he saw security there for the children and for Sally, see. But then he had greater security after he came to Springfield, see. And often when he kept saying that, he said it would be a gateway to Zion. And I'm wondering, when all this violence starts upon the earth and the people around about can't get no closer than Springfield, if it won't transform with the saints there into some protection, because they've been told up here at Stewartsville, Missouri, that's not over 50 miles from here, and that the saints would have to gather in the reunion grounds there in the days of violence, and they would be protected at the reunion grounds. So you see, they may be places, and in Chicago, when we were there, we were told they'd have to come to the church for protection. And that the enemy only came 18 feet of the building, over the pit. I heard him bear the testimony in 23. And he said they were on their knees, see, kneeling to come to the center place. So why couldn't Springfield be a protection for the people that are around about there?
It could be.
Because
It'd be nice to know.
Yeah.
Yes, it would be.
I've heard something like that.
And Brother Sparling's the one that said it, and he's the one who told me one time that that the beginning of Zion would be if you put a pencil on Independence and took it over as far as Nauvoo, and then come right around with it like that. That would be the first area of protection. Now he seemed to have some knowledge and enlightenment on that. That the nucleus of Zion would first start here, and it would spread out. That would be the size of it for the next movement of it. That kind of goes like Brother Halsworth said, that the ones that left Independence and pressures of sin and things and couldn't stay, that they went beyond here because they couldn't stand what was being brought against them. So that may be a cleansing way too. You never know. Now you take all this out of your book that you don't want, and I'm going to see what else, that if there's some more testimonies here. Now we got the little boy. We got being bawled out on the mountain, and we got where you see it's a little baby.
You didn't get the one about the little boy on his knee. You didn't get that on the tape.
Oh,
I didn't have that on when you was talking about that.
Well, do you want?
You want to tell it again?
Well, do you want? I think it's.
We could write it down, I guess.
It's just that's all there is to it. Is that just that he, when he was blind, but we couldn't tell that hardly if you got in a book, but you could tell it among your own people, that he felt that because Mary held such a grudge against Katie, and that I guess it was everything but a fight, you know, between them.
It was really tense.
It was really tense. And what hurt Brother Sparling was that Mother hardly been buried till Hattie and Ethel came in, he said, and they took everything they could get her that was loose. All sheets, said they didn't even hardly leave him a change of anything. Blankets that they had bought since they were together, you know, and things that he had before. And he wasn't bitter about it, but he just said it just showed that how they thought Mother was going to outlive him. But you know, God's got a way to say, "Thou fool, thy soul is required of thee this night." You know, that's the way we never know. None of us know who will outlive the other one, and it shouldn't be that way anyway. We should be living in such harmony that it shouldn't have those kind of thoughts. Now let's see, when Mary dies in return, and I'd always remember this by her coming back to ask Brother Sparling's forgiveness. And said the reason she had to come back, I said, wonder why she had to come back to you. He said, I was told it was my priesthood that had gone to her before she died and asked her to let me bring Katie over. And she had turned it down. And with my priesthood, she should obey me. That she should have asked forgiveness while she could. So I can see that, can't you? It's not because but he was cautious, very cautious about it. If Bernard comes, she'd like to see you so much. I guess that's all I got down. I don't remember any other one, but I bet you this is the one that Charles had told you about in the field. Well, anyway, he never got, his life ended, you might say, he didn't get to read. What he wanted to read, he wanted to be on everything that he didn't have time to read, he wanted to have time to read. He said he had articles laid back that he wanted to read. And he says, I know I never would get to read it because of it.
He had a lot of books.
Yeah, and he wanted to spend he thought if he could just sit in a chair and read, it would be a wonderful thing, but he wasn't permitted to do that. He said, right now, yes, there she comes, so I'm glad. And
Did you get everything that was on that paper?
Yes, I think so.
Do you remember if he ever mentioned anything about Herman and Henry and their priesthood, the work that they might do or anything?
No, he never talked to me about that. He just you see, he baptized us, and he kind of was proud of us, you know, that we did that way. My father used to say, you folks got church houses to go to, and as soon as you come down here in the field, I'll show you my church house. It was you ever know what shoemake is? It's flat silver mix, you know, like a grove. And there was a spring there with a white bottom to it, rock bottom. And he had a place where he could sit, you know. He'd take his little pillow down there and sit on this rock. And he said, I can just feel angels come here. He said, you all got church houses. I said, all I've got down here is I never did get to take the sacrament once. But he read, they had what they call Zion Ensign there, and the Herald, and the books. My dad was well read, and he loved the gospel. And my brother Sparling come to visit us twice. And that's, you know, got to come down twice.
Did he ever talk about any of the experiences my father had?
No, all we ever heard was that your father got drowned. That's all we ever heard.
Well, there's some woman that came to church one time, and I was just a little kid, and she said, you could be very proud of your father. Said he was a wonderful man and had many wonderful experiences, but I was too little to ask for anything. And I don't even know who it was, and I thought maybe you might have.
No, he wasn't out in the West when or somewhere in the West where he drowned.
In Washington, I think.
State of Washington.
I think so too. Was he a missionary?
Yes, he was in the mission field, and he was an expert swimmer. But they had gone swimming, some of them, and his sister got in one of those little whirlpool things, pulled her down. Well, he got in there and got her out, and she was so scared she swam to shore, and she didn't notice that he had been pulled in. And by the time they got him out, it was too late.
Yeah.
But maybe you never had heard that Herman can remember his father, the rest of us can't. But he said Dad used to take him on his knee. He was 8 or 9 after Dad died. And he said Dad used to take him on his knee and say, always live each day so that you'll be prepared anytime you have to go, something like that.
Not one.
And Herman said, well, are you ready? And he said, not quite. But the last time he told Herman that, Herman says, are you ready? And he said, yes, I'm ready. So he must have had some idea.
Some idea that he...
Anyway, he knew he was ready whenever he needed to go.
Well, they say they're coming into the prison house just for see, there's wrecks, there's plane wrecks, there's bus wrecks, and the people are absolutely having to go and hear the gospel. And it really takes a lot of men to preach to these people that are getting killed. And so I guess your dad is doing a good work.
Well, the saints all had a special prayer meeting, and they asked to know why he was taken when he was such a wonderful man and doing such a wonderful work. And I don't remember who told me, but they said that they were told that he was needed over there.
Yes, and that's what Brother Lewis was told, you see. Even the Apostle Lewis seemed so awful, you know, to take him, and said that for the work where they wanted to put him, that he was needed.
This is what Sister Wilson told me one time, that she felt like Charlie's work was to teach in the prison house.
Yes, I think so too. I think my brother was too, Fred. So I guess that you know that they got to hear it. That's all there is to it. If they don't know it, they still got to hear it. You know, Sister Marsh can tell you about someone that she knows that her sister lived at St. Joseph, but this girl and her brother were very close, and all in their teens. And the brother never had gone up to the, like we say, Baptist or Methodist, up to the mourner's bench and give his heart to Christ, and she hadn't either. But the preacher had been after him a few nights at a protracted meeting, and this brother died. And the preacher, their home preacher, said that her brother had gone to hell and would never in a burning hell, and that he would never get out because he had had an opportunity to come up to this mourner's bench, and he didn't come. And so this bothered the girl so much that she said her brother was so good and so nice and clean that she would not eat. So if he's in hell, she says, I want to go to hell too. And so she refused to eat, and she got down where they thought she had died. And they used to have the long ago what they call cooling boards. They didn't. That's before the embalming. And they laid her on this cooling board, and all of the neighbors came in. And pretty soon she sat up with this sheet over her. And when she sat up, she said, well, now you can all go home. She looked right direct at the preacher. And she said, you can all go home because I'm not dead. She says, I've been where my brother was. And she told her story, and he said, he is just 3. Well, that scared them to death, and they left. But this was her story she told, that her brother told her, I've just got 2 more rooms before I'll be where the tabernacle is. And he said, do you see those 2 men leaving? And so they were 2 men leaving with satchels. And he said, now when you'll find the church, when you see those 2 men, you'll see their pictures someday. They're the ones, and that'll be the church. And so she went on, and she got married and had a family. She went to St. Joseph, Missouri, and was in a Latter-day Saints home. And they had 2 small pictures of Joseph the prophet and Harp the patriarch on the mantle of a fireplace. And said she walked up there, and she said, oh, she says, who are these men? Oh, she said, you wouldn't know them. And she said, why are you staring at those pictures? She said, I've seen those men. I know those men. Well, she laughed there, and she said, well, those men were dead long before you were born. Said they were shot. And she says, I know where I saw them. So she told the story to this girl. And they become she became very interested in it, don't you see? And he said that when she would know the church, when she found these men that they had, and so she came into the gospel in St. Joseph, Missouri. And there's 3 churches there, but that's been many years ago. But that's how she found it, by going where her brother was. And her brother was not in a burning hell. He was so good that he was just, at length of time, that he just lacked three places of coming to the tabernacle. So we don't ever
So
want.
I know there's progress, don't
Yes,
we?
we sure do.
Well, we better take a bit more time.
Well, it's all right. What time we got? I got to watch without me running.
15 after 2.
Oh, no. Run will be back in here in a little bit.
Well, she just went through there.
Are you sure that's right?
They said they got off early.
Kids got out early because of the heat. I hope my kids don't get out early.
They didn't yesterday.
Can they get in the house?
They've got air conditioning.
All over the radios that they were letting schools out because
All
of
of
the
them?
heat. I don't know. I was surprised to see Blue Springs, but it was on the
Well, now,
newscast.
my kids go to an air-conditioned school.
Oh, well, then they probably won't.
Hello, Verna.
Hi, hon.
You guys come